Welcome to Law Next. This is Bob Ambrogi, and I'm on the road today, but earlier this week I had an opportunity to record a really fascinating episode on AI and innovation at the American Arbitration Association with two returning guests. They were Bridget McCormack, the AAA's president and CEO and the former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, and Diana Didia, the executive vice president who oversees the AAA's technology, data, and innovation initiatives. When Bridget and Diana were last on this podcast about 21 months ago, we talked extensively about the AAA's innovation culture and their early experiments with generative AI. At the time, Bridget said that anyone who thinks they know where generative AI is going, even next week, is fooling themselves. While that may still be true, the AAA has certainly made some bold moves in that direction. Just a few days before we recorded this, AAA announced something unprecedented in the dispute resolution world, an AI Arbitrator that it's launching in November. This isn't just another AI tool to assist lawyers or arbitrators. This is an AI system that will actually draft arbitration awards, with a human arbitrator validating and signing off on the final decision before it goes out. Today we'll dive deep into how this AI Arbitrator works, what it means for the future of dispute resolution, and how it fits into the AAA's broader innovation strategy as the organization approaches its 100th anniversary next year. We'll also explore the cultural transformation within the AAA that's enabled these technological advances and what's coming next in their AI native vision for dispute resolution. You're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to that interview, please take this moment to hear from the sponsors whose generosity keeps this podcast running. Enhance your law firm's efficiency with Practice Panther, the leading all-in-one practice management platform trusted by tens of thousands of attorneys. With Practice Panther, you can automate workflows, track time and expenses, manage documents, streamline client intake, and process online payments without ever leaving the platform. Switching is easy with free data migration and live support. Try Practice Panther for free at practicepanther.com. You didn't go to law school to waste time writing and responding to discovery requests. Never waste time on discovery again with BriefPoint. BriefPoint drafts your discovery responses and requests for documents within minutes of your first sign-in. BriefPoint is the most reliable discovery drafting solution on the market, and it works right out of the box. Get your first document drafted by going to briefpoint.ai and clicking Get Started. No credit card required. BriefPoint. Draft what matters, automate the rest. Now let's get to that conversation with Bridget and Diana. Bridget and Diana, welcome back to Law Next.
Hi.
Great to be back.
Good to see you both. So you were last on this podcast about 21 months ago. It was a point at which, Bridget, you had been at AAA just about a year, just over a year, I think, at that point. As a matter of fact, I was listening back to the recording, and you said you accepted the job in September 2023. So I think we are at the second anniversary of your having accepted the job. But you started, I think it was in February 2024. No, January, February 2024, something like that. I mean, no, I'm a year off.
Yeah.
2022, 2023.
Right.
Yeah, that makes it right. At that point, we talked a lot about the innovation initiatives that you had were undertaking at the AAA. Diana, you had talked about the fact that you'd been at the AAA for over a decade at that point, and that innovation efforts had been undertaken well before Bridget came to the organization. But there was a lot of sentiment that Bridget had certainly helped to kind of formalize and, some were saying at the time, supercharge some of these innovation efforts, including working to build a culture of innovation at the AAA. I was coming into my office this morning thinking about this. I was thinking I should just say what's new since then and sit back and turn off my mic, and you could probably fill the rest of this podcast, but then I wouldn't be doing my job. But I'm kind of curious to just kind of start, and I'm going to refer listeners back to that and not kind of rehash all of that. But you had, you were already beginning a number of innovations, particularly around the use of generative AI and in other ways. One of the one of the statements you said, Bridget, in that last interview was that anybody who thinks they know where generative AI is going even next week is fooling themselves. And that probably could be said about innovation as well. But so I guess just to start, and we can dive in and dig into all of this. But Bridget, what's been kind of the most significant progress or milestones for you over the last couple of years, for you at the AAA over the last couple of years, in terms of your innovation efforts?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having us back. We're excited to be here and excited to answer that question and like lots of others because we're pretty proud of what we've done so far and excited about our roadmap ahead. Your question about what's happened with our innovation culture and innovation pipeline is a good starting place. You're right. We had a funded and structured innovation program even before I started. That program reported up to Diana, which is, I think, why she was on that call to begin with. But obviously, a lot of other important work streams report up to Diana as well. We'll get into that later. The innovation team itself has grown since we first met. And I would say the company-wide culture has also deepened. And generative AI has been a great force for doing that because obviously, there are just endless ideas for what the technology might do across our operations to make them better, faster, stronger, and what it can do for our core products and services that we didn't have when we last spoke and now do. And so we've built a tremendous number of new generative AI products and services and built it into our operations. And I think our innovation team and innovation platform is key to the success we've seen. I don't know that we would have seen the success we have without that. I think we might have told you then that everybody is connected. Every single person at AAA, no matter what your job is, has innovation training. That's fundamental to working at AAA, and everybody at the AAA is connected on an innovation platform we call Bright Idea. We upload ideas there. We upvote them, downvote them, workshop them, and they go from there into a structured innovation pipeline and move through a series of other steps. The generative AI ideas on that platform, gosh, Diana will correct me, but last time I checked, we're at least close to 100. And obviously, we're not building 100 things at one time. And so we have a way of, the senior team has a way of deciding which of those ideas go into production. Diana and her team then produce them. And we can talk a little bit about all of those. But I do think the innovation program is fundamental to our success in what we've built with generative AI. And I think you can think about our journey kind of in 4 steps. First thing we did was give everybody access to the technology and rules about how to use it, and then encourage them to ideate. Like, think about the ways in which this can make your work better, faster, stronger, and the services we provide our customers better, faster, and stronger. And they did. We then started building point solutions, and we built those both because they are useful to people who use our services and useful to us as we deliver our services, but also because that helped us learn as we prepared for bigger bets. As we prepared for building some bigger things with this technology. We then built it into our sort of enterprise content management. Diana and team have built generative AI into the platforms that our users interact with. Our panelists and our parties. And all of that was in service of the biggest bet of all, which is what we announced last week, an AI arbitrator. And we can obviously talk about that. But you started with innovation, and I wanted to answer that first. There's obviously lots more in there. I should say that since you last met Diana, she's been promoted. She's now an executive vice president. And she not only is responsible for our successful innovation program, but all of our technology, our data. And I feel like there's other stuff too. Obviously, Diana's been pretty important to this path that we're on.
Diana, well, congratulations on that promotion. Since last we talked, I wonder, what about from your perspective? What would have been some of the significant milestones over the last couple of years since the last time we were able to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. As Bridget said, I think we've been focused on working on various AI initiatives that not only bring that immediate value to our customers, but also are driving our learning technically and learning how we partner, how we marry our subject matter expertise to the development of generative AI. So that's in prompt development, in usability, and it really is a collaboration in a very unique and accelerated way. We've actually even recently posted some brand new positions, that job descriptions that are the combination of technical skills and legal skills, because we see that as something that we're going to need more and more of. Someone that can bridge the gap, so to speak, when we're trying to perfect legal use cases. Yeah, so we've done a lot of. Bridget mentioned some of them, but whether it's chatbots or chat books or enhancing our document management, document summaries, way you search for our panelists and creating lists of panelists. We've been enhancing that with AI. I think the big next step, aside from we definitely are excited to talk about our AI Arbitrator and the platform that we built that hosts it. We also have been really spending a lot of time thinking about a transition to AI native case management overall. And that is thinking about really starting from scratch, examining all of our workflows and trying to really think of it as a blank slate. And now that we have AI in the toolkit, as powerful as this version of automation is, what would we do differently? And that's been a lot of workshops and discussions with the business, 20, 30 people in the room, where we're stepping through from intake all the way to award and trying to map that out, because then the next step will be to build it. And we have support from our board of directors to do that. So we're planning to replace our case management system with an AI native solution within 2 years. And that's independent of what we're launching in the fall. So it's like a parallel process. And so behind the scenes, we believe in this. It is, it's not just our industry, right? I think everyone is seeing that the efficiencies are like right there. Like you want to bake this into everything. And in order to do that, it requires to realize those efficiencies. It really requires baking it into your enterprise solutions, not just bolting it on. The integration is important. And so we are fortunate enough that actually our case management system is pretty aged. So we didn't really get much pushback because it was time for a replacement anyway. That's really fortuitous that we're getting a chance to sort of start from scratch.
Yeah. Well, next year is the 100th anniversary of the AAA, and I would certainly, just from my own knowledge of it, would have thought that there was a lot of areas that were kind of ripe for innovation within the organization. But one of the areas that Bridget already alluded to it, but you talked a lot about it in our last interview, was just kind of the culture within the organization and establishing and nurturing a culture of innovation. You talked about the idea pipeline that you had, where employees, make suggestions for great ideas they had, and that you actually were able to build on some of those suggestions that you'd received. So again, before we kind of dig into some of the specifics of what you've done over the last couple of years, I'm curious just on the culture side, how successful have you been? What does that sort of journey look like in building that culture within the organization over the last couple of years, including not just your employees, but, the arbitrators and mediators and the other people who are part of your universe?
You want to go, Bridget? Since you usually are the one leading the charge, I could talk about specifics. Fine.
I'll go briefly, but then I think you should pick in, because this is a team that reports up to you, and you really should take a lot of credit for it. But I want to give credit to the AAA before I got here. It's like, it is lucky to step into a new job and learn that, there's actually people who are paid to do innovation as their full-time work. It helps, right? Like, I don't think you can think of innovation as, because it's creative, it's kind of, flexible and, volunteer. And that's not true. It has to be structured. It has to be funded. It has to be supported. It has to be, it's never going to be bottom up unless it's also top down. So, the folks across the AAA had to hear from, the highest levels of leadership that this is really important to us, and that the way we see navigating the next 100 years is if we have a sophisticated innovation culture. And I do think we have really built that. And Diana, why don't you talk a little bit more about what it looks like, how your team manages it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we're doing that we mentioned the first time we met, we're still doing, whether that's education, town halls. I can't recall if at the time we had given out access to ChatGPT licenses.
You had,
yeah,
yep.
On that, we have Copilot also active for our staff. We actually have, in the last year, even conducting idea hackathons where the innovation team travels to each of our large offices and we are generating ideas, ideating over our strategic initiatives. And that's been really exciting because staff are getting to put to use all of this innovation training, and they get a day away from their day job, and they are finding that very satisfying that they are being, we really care, and we want them to help us to move our strategic plan forward, and they're having an opportunity to do that. And then just a lot of collaboration. Like we have had, as part of this AI native initiative, we actually have about 20 staff that we took volunteers and we looked through their experience. They had to write a little essay as to why they wanted to participate, but they've been made full-time on the AI initiative project. So they are coming out of their day job and they're moving on to this project, bringing their subject matter expertise to bear. And we had, I forgot the exact number, but I want to, certainly 2 or 3 times the number of folks that we needed applied for that, for those opportunities to work on the AI native initiative. So we really feel as if people see, our staff are really seeing opportunity in this, and that they're appreciative that they've been given the education to collaborate and participate. It's not just something that's happening in New York or in headquarters. It's really a company-wide objectives, and that they feel like they're able to contribute and help move the needle as well.
Yeah, and what about that sort of that community beyond the staff, the arbitrators and the mediators and others that you partner with and that are part of your organization?
Yeah, I will say that it's actually been really. I think we're at a turning point. Like I know we're going to talk here about the AI Arbitrator, but I've been invited to talk a lot in front of audiences of arbitrators, and we had a lot of arbitrators participating with us on the design of the AI Arbitrator. And, a year or so ago, it was really still lots of conversations about, is AI good or bad, black and white, hallucinations, not hallucinations. And I think that the way we talk about all of this is, one, we're giving them education. We've given our panelists access to ClearBrief, AI Copilot tool. If they serve on a AAA case, they're able to get training around the use of such a tool. And I think it's similar to with what we're doing with our staff is, again, we're not trying to hide and do this in the closet. We really want you to be educated so that you can give us feedback on what we're building so we can do it in the most effective way. And recently in front of panelists, where I'm talking about an AI arbitrator, which I'm sure is quite, gives them apprehension, they really do lean in, and now they're asking, they really want to know how it works, how we trained it, if they're going to partner with it, what does that look like? And I feel like that is, I'm happy to, I think we have them on the journey with us, right? We have them open to really understanding, asking, I think, the next set of questions instead of it being very, I don't believe in this, or I'm nervous about it. You got to push through that, I think, for an ecosystem, for this community to really nail all these legal use cases effectively. We need to be doing it in collaboration.
So far in this episode, we've been talking about the innovation culture at the AAA and how they've been integrating AI into various aspects of their operations. But when we come back, we're going to dive into something unprecedented in the dispute resolution world, the AAA's AI Arbitrator that launches this November. This isn't just an AI tool to assist arbitrators, it is an AI system that will actually draft arbitration awards. But first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Automate your firm today with Practice Panther, the leading all-in-one law practice management software trusted by tens of thousands of attorneys just like you. With powerful features like customized workflows, streamlined client communications, automated billing, and easy time tracking, you'll be able to get back to doing what you do best, practicing law. Discover how Practice Panther can transform your firm today. Visit practicepanther.com to get your free trial. If you're still spending hours drafting complex agreements from scratch, it's time to meet Paxton. Paxton is the legal AI assistant built for firms of all sizes. It helps you find the right language, draft with precision, and handle tricky clauses, all without missing a detail. Lawyers trust Paxton to turn hours of drafting into minutes. One said, quote, "An operating agreement with 3 or 4 customizations used to take 2 to 3 hours. Now it's maybe half an hour. No long-term contracts, easy to use, and you can try it free. Get started today at paxton.ai and let them know we sent you." Welcome back to Law Next. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and I'm speaking with Bridget McCormack, the CEO of the American Arbitration Association, and Diana Didia, the AAA's Executive Vice President overseeing technology and innovation. Before the break, we were discussing the AAA's innovation initiatives and culture. Now let's talk about their most ambitious project yet, an AI arbitrator that will launch in November for construction disputes. Let's pick it up there. Yeah, since we keep talking around the AI arbitrator, maybe we ought to talk about the AI arbitrator because as we are speaking, it was just announced last week that you're going to be launching this AI native arbitrator. Who wants to tell me about it?
I wanted to add one little bit to the question about arbitrators and parties.
Yeah, go ahead, Bridget.
Diana's all of her answers. I would say it's such a large and diverse community that there's not an easy answer to how have arbitrators reacted and how have lawyers reacted. I don't know what you're finding this, Bob, but I'm finding that the in-house lawyers that I meet with are in a significantly different place than many of the lawyers who they partner with to represent them, in law firms. And I think that's all understandable. People are viewing, sort of threat and opportunity in different ways. But I do think we're in a different place across the profession today than we were even 6 months ago and 12 months ago. And the panelists, for the most part, I really believe that there's only going to be more and more use cases for ADR, period. And so figuring out how we can arm our panelists with the best technology that parties are going to want feels like feels win-win. And I do think they're coming around to that. Some, I think, saw it from the beginning. We've obviously had a group of panelists with us in building this AI arbitrator, and they've been, a really important part of that process because, what differentiates, and now I'm going to answer the actual question you asked, our product from one you could build in, anybody could build in front of their computer with ChatGPT by building a ChatGPT wrapper around a dispute resolution prompt, is that we have this expertise, right? We have 100 years of expertise. We were able to train this first version of our AI arbitrator on over 1,500 cases that are domain specific. And then we had arbitrators who practice, construction in the mix throughout all of the build and the testing. And that's the special sauce that we have, is the expertise that makes the product significantly more robust than what you might build yourself on Saturday with ChatGPT. I should say it's a document. We built the first one with a very specific use case in mind. Documents only construction cases. Did that for lots of reasons. One, because that's a case where people really want speedy resolution, right? In construction projects, people need to keep building, and so they need their disputes resolved quickly. We have a documents-only traditional process that is used fairly regularly, so we know there's a market for documents-only resolution, and we had a lot of expertise, therefore. And so that is the first AI arbitrator that will be live November 3rd. We are right now working with our users on figuring out what the next use cases that we'll build. And Diana believes she and her team will be able to build more quickly each use case as we go along. But we're lucky that we can be informed by users about which use cases make the most sense. This is an opportunity for
Hmm.
us to be able to give users just another solution in their ADR toolkit, right? So we can, make the forum fit the fuss, right? So if you are a big company that has a bunch of different kinds of disputes, you might imagine this AI arbitrator being perfect for certain disputes, and other disputes you might really want, majority human led dispute resolution, or as I've started calling it, biological intelligence led dispute resolution. But Diana, what did I miss that's important to answer the sort of top line question? And then Bob, when you get to the really technical level, you might try just for fun to let me answer it because Diana's here. So
No, I think that's right. I think that I will say I'll add to why we picked construction from a technical perspective is that it has a lot of very interesting, like diverse set of issues related in construction disputes. So that diversity was important for, it's effectively different legal use cases, and that was important for the breadth of training that we wanted to give this first version of the AI arbitrator. Lots of different types of evidence. You've got photographs. It wasn't just all text documents that in the documents only data sets, and lots of reasoned awards. So this is our moat. Our moat in doing all this is that we have the cases and the human issued awards to use as benchmarking against the AI arbitrator's output, and having reasoned awards, which is common in construction disputes because they're complicated, is allowing us to map out, the decision making or the chain of thought, if you will, that a human arbitrator goes through to decide, interrogate the evidence and decide. And then we map that out, and then we're emulating that with the AI arbitrator.
And the announcement said that there remains a human in the loop element to this. So explain that.
Sure. So we designed it to be as self-service as possible because we're trying to gain as many efficiencies. So that the parties submit the claimant files, and then the parties both put in their submissions. And there's a lot of deconstructing of their submissions. The AI it's very transparent, is breaking out all of their claims, and that is actually validated. The human in the loop for that step is the filer themselves. So it is presented back to them as, this is what I heard, the AI saying, this is what I think I heard. And the filers are able to confirm that or edit it. And if they edit it, that's feedback for, back into improving our AI engines. Only at the point when all the submissions are in is an arbitrator appointed to the case. And we have a permanent panel for this product. It's a round robin. There is still a disclosure process. If there was a disqualifying disclosure, or the parties can have part of the rules is they can reject and another arbitrator is selected. At that point, the arbitrator, the big difference between us and a co-pilot, they see a set of screens, which is a very muscular co-pilot. Like, we spent a lot of time with the arbitrators in this development process, because it goes so far as it's showing them all of the case summaries, and they can click through to the actual documents and a timeline. It shows them the claims and issue analysis. But the piece that is different is it actually drafts an award. So it has reasoned its way through, and it's showing that draft award to the human arbitrator. And now the human arbitrator is spending time reading that award and looking at the evidence, and then they are the ones certifying. Again, they can make adjustments and edits that is fed back into the AI engine, and at that point, they are validating or certifying the award, and it's actually their name, it's their award that they're issuing in the end. That's the way we've designed it. And the arbitrators are telling us that at first it was interesting. Some of them were skeptical. That's a big ask, right? That we're saying, we're trying to expedite this. So we've organized this in a way to make your review as efficient as possible. But we're still asking you to put your name on it. Like, it's your award. But in the end, the arbitrators that were part of the whole journey said that they are reviewing those case materials about 30 to 50% faster than they would without the AI having done all that work and having not proposed an outcome. And so that is the big difference. So it is, the AI is issuing an award, but the human is validating it, and the human is signing it.
the AI is drafting an award, but the human is issuing it, I think is what you mean. But yes.
I like that.
But let me add one more thing, Bob, sort of just by way of background. I think Diana would tell you right now that the technology is there for the AI to issue the award with accuracy and reliability at a level that is at least as that you could be as confident about as you could with most human. But that doesn't mean that the market's ready for it or the parties are ready for it. So, I always say we're in the horseless carriage shaped like a horse, like phase of this technology. Like the first, engineer that built a horseless carriage built it shaped like a horse so that people would get in it, right? And also because sometimes that's the only way you can imagine it. And that's where we are right now. But it's designed so that the human can be unplugged one day if that's what the users want. And certain users will probably want that before other users, and they should all be able to choose their own adventure.
Listening to Diana, I had a flashback to law school, because when I was in law school, I worked for a arbitrator, and I would go to his hearings and I would take all the evidence and write his decision like a law clerk, I'm sure, for when you were on the court, Bridget, and then present him with a draft opinion, and he would go through it and mark it up and whatever and sign his name to it, but I wrote it. It sounds like AI would have put me out of a job back then. But and I assume the parties are consenting to this process in advance. Has this been, I know you're launching it in November, has it already been launched in a beta where you've been testing it with parties?
We've been testing it with simulations where we've taken completed cases from our data repository, and then we've had arbitrators, lawyers, law school students all play the claimant and the respondent and the arbitrator. And we've done that, with over 1,000 cases, but we haven't had actual cases go through it. And that is the next step that we're looking for, early adopters. And you're right, it would be completely opt-in. We're talking about, maybe we would try to incentivize newly filed construction documents only cases to utilize the new platform. Or completed cases, maybe they're curious, like they'd want to, run it through there to see how it operates. Like we have lots of different go-to-market strategies that we're exploring, but yes, we would like to drive usage. So we're going to be creative about it. And we are, it is all opt-in, opt-in process.
Like I think sometimes gets lost in, there's so much to talk about with this, like new way of doing business. But one thing that I find that might be underappreciated is the beginning part of the process that Diana described as the AI, which is really just a set of agents. I think Diana told me at one point maybe up to 80 agents are involved in this build. When the AI is deconstructing the parties' submissions, when it's building what it reads, it's showing all the different claims, each element of a claim, what evidence it believes you think supports that claim, and the legal framework surrounding that claim. And then the parties get to say, yes, that's right, or no, this part's wrong, and they can, they get to move it to a place where they are satisfied that it fully understands what they think their case is. And that's like a game changer, because think of like when you're in litigation, you file a motion for summary disposition, and the other side responds to it, and maybe you can file a reply. The judge might let you. Then the judge and the clerk go off, to who knows where, and do what you and the arbitrator did. They read all the pleadings, they write up a decision, and they issue a decision. I can't tell you how many times parties will come, when I was on a reviewing court, would come to the Michigan Supreme Court and say, I don't know what happened at the Court of Appeals. They didn't even respond to the most important issue in the case, or they brought the legal framework completely wrong. This is what we said supported it. This is the citation they made. And I am here to tell you that judges and even arbitrators are humans who make mistakes. And the ability to make sure that at least when they get your case, they fully understand the claims, the evidence you think supports those claims, each element of those claims, and the legal framework is kind of a game changer for a party, right? I mean, you just don't get that in any human-led decision-making process. And so I keep talking about that.
And that's happening before the final.
Exactly.
That's happening before the final draft is generated, right?
before
Yeah,
the task
that is a
award
game changer.
the arbitrator, right? So the parties get to make
Yeah.
sure that they're understood. They feel heard and understood, which is, like that's kind of what dispute resolution is all about. You want to feel like the decision maker really heard you and understood at least what you thought. I think that's a game changer for the future of
No, that's really important. That arbitrator that I talked about that I worked for when I was in law school always said one of the most important things to do as an opinion is to make sure you address everything they raised, whether you think it's frivolous or not, just so
Absolutely.
they know you've heard them. But of course, at that point, it's kind of too late because you're already putting the opinion out. And if you did miss something or if you got it wrong, it's kind of moot at that point. But
Yeah.
that's really a significant point. Well, I was just kind of curious where this goes from starting with the paper construction cases. What are some other sort of likely candidates for this process in terms of the kinds of cases that you handle?
Me? Yeah. I mean, the next caseload that we think we're going to focus on is insurance, like payer provider disputes. That is a lot of volume, usually a lot of lower dollar claims. We believe that those particular customers are going to be especially interested in a solution that has a lower price point. And there's a lot of data. Again, we are, I think in this stage of the game, we're looking for enough data to move on to the next domain. And as Bridget mentioned, we do feel like as we move forward, it'll get easier to train. We won't maybe have to have as much data. And we're talking about a lot less data than historically you would have needed to do any kind of automation, by the way. That is coming from the fact that the foundation models have consumed the world's data. So they are already a very capable arbitrator, really. I mean, so now we're turning them into very domain specific, where all the corner cases and the interesting bits live using our data. Yeah, so I think it'll get faster, but for now we're looking for another meaty data set that has that diversity of issues, enough data for us to train, and where we think that the ecosystem is interested in this type of solution.
Bridget, you talked about the impact on the parties insofar as they can validate that they're being heard. What about the impact in terms of cost, timing, those kinds of factors?
Yeah, we actually we're talking about this all the time, and we think right now, Diana, you have the numbers in front of me. We made our team calculate against documents only construction cases in the legacy process. We think the cost savings are going to be anywhere from 30 to 50% just at the start, and the time savings are 25 to 30% at the start. But I believe that this is just a point in time, and the directional movement of both of those metrics is up and to the right. It's only going to the time is only going to get faster, and the cost is only going to come down, like we see with this technology generally. That's just a reality of it.
Bridget, you have a great legacy of thinking and talking about access to justice, and part of when you're talking about that in the legal community broadly, not in the context of the American Arbitration Association, there's always this sort of debate among legal professionals over if we authorize all these alternative forms of delivering legal services, what's going to happen to my job, and is going to put lawyers out of business. So what does this mean for arbitrators? Does this put them out of business at some point?
So I don't think so at all. I mean, I do think that their business models will change. And I do think that you want to be able to be one of those arbitrators who's able to accommodate an AI native process because you're going to continue to have a big career. I think the ability to open up dispute resolution to more parties, which is what this will do, right? By bringing the cost down and the time down, and also the making the process just simpler for users, is going to mean that if right now we have the 1 million disputes a year, we can resolve 10x that. And that's amazing, right? I mean, it's just going to open up completely new frontiers for dispute resolution, and therefore, in my view, have a tremendous impact on access to justice. As you know, Bob, right now, most people go with disputes unresolved all the time, civil disputes, mostly because they have the barrier is finding legal help. But if we can build dispute resolution that allows people to directly, go figure out how to resolve their own disputes, that's a significant contribution to the broken civil justice market. I mean, in fact, I can't think of a bigger way to make a contribution to the broken civil justice market right now from where I sit than figuring out a brand new way for people, small, medium businesses, organizations without, endless funding to resolve their disputes and move forward with their lives. I say to arbitrators all the time, it's not going to put you out of business, quite the opposite. It's going to allow like significantly more disputes to come our way, but you do have to come along for the ride. I do think that if you're not along for the ride, then you might want to think about what the next phase of life looks like.
When you were on this podcast in 2024, there were a number of AI projects that you were already piloting. There was the clause builder, filing assistant chatbot, automated scheduling orders. Where do those stand? What else is going on in the Gen AI sphere within the AAA that's I know there's a lot, but I mean, what are some of the highlights?
Some of the highlights are, well, we have there's a lot more chat resources on our new website. So that is, we're trying to be very best practice around allowing you to interact in natural language to ask questions about whether it's about rules or customer support and so forth. The searching for panelists, we have several ways that you could do that, whether you're participating in a case and you want to have like a more fulsome, like you're really trying to pick the arbitrator. So you want to compare resumes and so forth, or if you're just browsing our panel. So we are in the process of anywhere that we have a panelist search, like enhancing that with generative AI. So that's been something else that we've been focused on. We've rolled out more. We started with just one chat book, and we started, we think, with labor, and now there's an employment, taking our publications and allowing you to interact with them with natural language. And then, beyond that, though, the document summary and Q&A is also available in our eCenter and web file. But we have switched gears a bit to really focusing time and energy on the AI arbitrator and platform, and then also the AI native part of this. So, and I still feel like some of the enhancements we will do are going to be standalone, not enough that they don't have to wait 2 years, like they would be brought to bear with our current case management process. So an example would be, we're eyeing the way that we schedule hearings and how much time that takes. Anybody who tries to get somebody, examine everyone's calendars and get everyone to agree to a time to have either an in-person hearing or an online hearing. That's still, you can use tools and utilities for that, but it still is very people heavy. In our new case management process, we want to have an agent that would handle that. And in mapping that out, that would be an example of something that may roll off the assembly line early enough to be brought to bear with our current case management process. And then it would be, baked in more fulsome way to the new solution. We don't intend to, we don't want to slow down having, chat bots and chat books and things like that. But we're really, now eyeing like the building blocks of our case management process and designing them for completely AI native. And then we'll be sort of cherry picking out ones that we think we can bring into service with our current case management process in the meantime.
I know our time is flying by here. I wanted to ask about the conference that you're doing in a couple of weeks in New York. You're having a conference on future dispute resolution and also holding a hackathon there in New York. And I guess, Bridget, maybe tell us a little bit about kind of why you're doing this and what you hope to accomplish out of it.
Yeah, thanks for that question as well. It's been, this is the third of 3 of these. We did the first one last September at Stanford Law School, and we did the same. We organized a series of discussions about the future of dispute resolution. Where was it going, in large part as a result of this technology, generative AI? What was that going to look like? And then a second day hackathon. We did the second one of these in The Hague in June. Same format, a little bit more of an international audience. And this one in New York, we're excited about just because, New York is a place where we can get lots of folks who are, sort of on the cutting edge of thinking about this. And so I think it'll be probably the most, and also we're just in a different place than we were a year ago. I feel like a year ago in Palo Alto, the conversations were kind of all over the map. You had like folks who were already thinking about what dispute resolution was going to look like, 5 years out, and some who were still very confident that there's no way in the world this technology could replace the humans that do this work that are critical to it. So I think the conversations will be different. But the reason we're doing it is because we Diana said before, we're building everything we're building in public, but we're an open book. We talk about, write about, and want everyone to be part of what we're doing, because we do think that that's part of bringing our communities along the way, right? I mean, I don't think everyone just wakes up one day and is ready for the way this technology will change what we have always done in this profession. So having these conversations and having them publicly, and then producing papers afterwards, and publishing those, is just an important part, we think, of leading what the future of dispute resolution looks like. It's not enough just to build products that people love. You have to have conversations to figure out, what people are ready for. So that's the point of it, I think.
Have the hackathons that you've done so far generated anything particularly that you've grabbed and run with?
Diana might have a better sense of like which of those hackathon ideas.
I feel like I need to. I feel like I hate misattributing if one came from there, but I've been asked this before, and I need to like have them right in front of me. I think we're doing. There has been. I think a good one is oftentimes our panelists are interested in their like stats, their own stats, like how many cases have I been on, what have been my revenue, what have been my number of cases that I've served on with the AAA in this area or that area. And I think that's an idea that came out of one of these hackathons, and is in presenting that in our eCenter tool to panelists so that they can have that snapshot of their relationship with the AAA. And, that is something they've asked for a while. And I think that is an idea that came out of the hackathon. We definitely need to have a list in front of us, Bridget, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know our internal hackathons, like our staff hackathons, have produced many ideas that are actually in production. I don't know if like the larger community is right where our teams are. Yeah, we're getting them there.
Yeah. All right. You talked about AI arbitrators. What about AI mediators? Is that on the drawing board?
Yeah, it is. I mean, what'd you say, Dan?
No, I was deferring to you.
Oh. Yeah, I think it is. Although, my own, like my personal view is there's going to be more and more need for mediation. I think this technology is going to give every party a better and earlier sense of the value of their dispute, and bring people together sort of more quickly. And as you know, Bob, there's oftentimes a window where a dispute could settle. And if you figure out what that window is a week after filing it, instead of 2 years after filing it in litigation, or 6 months after filing it in arbitration, whatever the numbers are, that's a sweet spot where a mediator can then figure out, okay, what are the things that might make a difference to the parties within this window. So I think there's going to again be more and more work for neutrals that like to do mediation. But there's definitely a role to play for parties in a mediation with this technology, depending on the particular case and the parties. So yes, on roadmap.
An interesting data point actually may be whether the AI arbitrator leads to settlements, because if you do get the case to that point where all the documents are laid out, all the arguments are laid out in a way the parties might not have seen them before, just in regular arbitration or regular litigation, sometimes when the parties actually sit down and understand what each other's case is about, they're much more likely to settle than they were when they were in the early stages of just arguing and being angry at each other. So that might be an interesting data point to look at.
About how all the agents that have been developed for the tool that we're launching in coming soon really could be just reconfigured. Like, you could switch up the interface a bit, and suddenly it would be an early case evaluation tool, something driving settlement. Like, for sure, you could just change the workflow, but the agents are still the agents. They can be brought to bear for these different use cases. I think it'll be very interesting that once we get more of our customer base seeing what it exactly we built, I think that how we would configure that will become more apparent. And it is something that could be a relatively quick, fast follow that we're just repackaging up the brain, with slightly different screens to address just that, like something that would be a settlement negotiation tool.
Yeah. This, as I said, next year is the 100th anniversary of the American Arbitration Association. Bridget, what should the industry expect to see coming next from AAA in terms of AI, innovation, dispute resolution services? What's ahead?
Well, you have a preview now. I mean, we believe that the AI arbitrator that we're building, again, starting very, very small and in a discrete case type area, is just the first of what will be a series of domain-specific AI arbitration products. And they won't only be arbitrators; they can be, as Diana just explained, early case evaluation. But we think with this technology we can build and offer dispute resolution services, options, new products, so that any party that wants to resolve a dispute will have an option they can afford and that will suit them. And we think that's perfect timing for the next 100 years. When AAA was founded 100 years ago, arbitration was an innovation. And the founders really felt strongly that it was not only an innovation that was going to make a difference to business disputes, it was an innovation that they wanted everybody to have access to. That there's if you read the founding documents, there was a little bit of an argument about whether it should be a service for businesses or it should be a process that everybody had access to. And their view was that if everybody had access to dispute resolution that they had control over, they had ownership, they had agency in, it would produce more peace in communities and literally global peace. Like, they had really, really grand ambitions. We think this technology allows us to deliver on that in a modern world, right? Arbitration is a really important process for lots of users, but the world has gotten significantly more complicated and we need more options, and we're ready to deliver those the next 100 years.
I've barely got through the long list of talking points here I wanted to talk to you about. So we may have to do this every year instead of every 2 years. But in just the last couple of minutes we have left here, was there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about today that we haven't touched on today? Diana, why don't I start with you?
I think that maybe just that the pace that this all plays out, we are now entering sort of the interesting phase where there's a lot of technical things to work out in regards to, how does OpenAI, what is their governance of issuing models as they come out? And if we've tuned everything on a particular version of a model, what is the process by which we would be upgrading to their next model? Or cybersecurity concerns, and all the different technology tools that will help us to monitor the ongoing effectiveness, the governance of the tool, the cost monitoring. Like, the whole thing is, it is amazing by which there are so many new entrants to addressing all of these different aspects of the technology. It really is entering this, how does the enterprise adopt it phase? And that's going to be very interesting. And it's, you read things about the return on investment not coming fast enough. There was an MIT article about the effectiveness or the impact of AI use cases. But as a technologist, I just think it's just you wait and see. It's now we're entering where we're really going to put these to bear in our enterprise, because the tools and utilities are starting to materialize that'll help us to do that. And I think it is going to get a little quiet for a while, and then there'll be the hockey stick. It'll take off because we all figured it out. That we now have the puzzle pieces are all there. The ingredients are finally all there, and we can bake all the cake. So it is a lot going on in regards to what technologists use to get all this work done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Bridget, anything else?
I would add to that we don't really care when the hockey stick turns. We're happy to use, if people want to use our core services the way they exist right now for as long as they want, that's great. They're there. We're ready. We're making improvements in those every day by importing some of these little wins that we have in our fielding of the future. In the meantime, with our new services, we're going to be able to continuously get feedback from users and make those better and better and better, so that when the market is ready for AI native dispute resolution for many disputes, most disputes. I don't know what it's going to look like exactly. We'll have a fine-tuned process to do that. And I want to go back to what I said about feeling heard. And the arbitrator you look for, Bob, was exactly right. There's actually a robust literature that I'm sure you're aware of on procedural fairness, procedural justice, and that literature shows that parties that feel like a court is mostly done around litigation, that a court understood their complaints and allowed them to say why they felt like they were, wronged or not wronged, depending on your perspective, are significantly more likely to accept an outcome that's adverse to what they wanted and then participate in the judicial process going forward, because it's more about whether you're heard than what the outcome is. And there's literally a robust literature on this. Mm-hmm. This technology, Ilya Sutskever said it in some early podcasting. He said, the thing that surprises me most about these models is the way they make me feel heard. When I heard, and I that's true myself, right? And that to me, it is the foundation of good dispute resolution. So there's really not a better use case in legal for this technology than the ones we're going to build and have ready for the world. And that makes us excited when we get up in the morning and excited when we go to bed at night. And I've said this at some conferences. I think the AAA is the most exciting business in legal tech. And I can't wait to talk to you.
Empathy and AI empathy, I guess. All right. Well, thank you so much for both of you for coming back on the show. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you, and we need to do it again because I have a lot more questions for you.
Sounds good.
All right. See ya. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so by messaging us on LinkedIn or other social media, or just email me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. If you're a fan, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.